Extract from the field diary of Corporal James H. Lewis, 15th U.S. Colored Infantry, dated April 14, 1865. We were told to hold the ridge until the dawn. The ridge had no name. The map only said low field north of the river. The men spoke little after midnight. We counted 32, then 31, then 30. One man missing. I wrote his name, but when I turned the page, the ink bled and spread across the paper. The line disappeared. The entry ends there, no signature. The following page is blank. 2 weeks later, a requisition report lists 30 men presumed lost, no bodies, no coordinates. Only a faint pencil note remains, fields north still unsafe. Ground whispers at night, filed April 1865 near Franklin, Tennessee, the same week Lincoln was assassinated. The 15th U.S. Colored Infantry stayed behind to patrol abandoned land and recover missing units. Meanwhile, letters arrived at the Freedmen's Bureau from wives and mothers asking the same question. Have you found the ridge? One letter from May 3, 1865 reads, Sir, they told us the earth was still soft where they last stood. We do not ask for the bodies, only the mark. Decades later, in a 1937 WPA interview, Sarah Carter, age 86, recalled, They say those boys never left that ground. When the wind comes across the grass, you can hear them march. The ridge moves like it remembers. Her words stand alone, neither confirmed nor disproven. A typewritten note found in the same archive box reads, Possible correlation between post-war disappearances and Phantom Regiment legends. No photographs survive. Only one mislabeled tintype remains marked, Unknown Soldiers, 1865, Franklin District. The faces are shadows against a blank field. In 1974, a Tennessee Historical Society survey recorded rhythmic audio interference 12 seconds long while studying the area's soil. The report notes ash fragments of iron traces of bone. The technician J. Ellis signed the report. He died 2 years later. The site is unmarked. Locals still say the phrase, the fields still whisper. It appears in sermons, songs, graffiti along old farm roads, a fragment of sound preserved within silence. 30 men erased from record. A ridge erased from maps. The absence remains the evidence. Welcome to The Fields Still Whisper, the Lost Battalion, 1865. Before we begin, leave a comment where you're watching from and the exact time you paused. What did you feel in that silence? The original diary of Corporal James H. Lewis was cataloged in 1911 by the War Records Office under the classification Recovered Field Journals, Western Division. The physical copy is housed today at the Tennessee State Archives Box, 22B Folder 9. The ink is browned, several pages are missing. The first legible entry begins on April 12, 1865, and ends abruptly on the 14th. There is no record of transfer discharge or death under his name in subsequent Union rolls. The document was first referenced in 1908 by military historian Edward C. Branson, who noted it among irregular field documents found near Duck River during reclamation work. Branson's notes mention a mildewed pack containing journals and regimental tags, but his own catalog omits the Lewis entry entirely. The discrepancy remains unexplained. His private correspondence preserved at Vanderbilt University reveals he dismissed the diary as superstitious field scribbling unfit for official compilation. The first verified transcription of the diary appeared in 1932 through a WPA historical records survey. The field worker assigned was Margaret L. Raines, age 37, who compiled oral testimonies and documents related to the Freedmen's Bureau correspondence in Middle Tennessee. Her report included the Lewis extract as Appendix D, labeling it Fragment from Unidentified Colored Infantry Corporal, April 1865. Raines submitted her materials to the Federal Writers Project branch in Nashville in 1937, alongside her own typed summary, Possible Relation Between the 15th U.S. Colored Infantry and Subsequent Civilian Disappearances in Williamson County. This suggestion was rejected by her supervisor as improper conjecture. The official WPA copy stored in Washington omits the sentence entirely. Only her carbon draft kept at the Tennessee Historical Society preserves the deleted line. 2 years later, Raines vanished while traveling between Columbia and Franklin to record additional oral testimonies. Her car was found abandoned near Leiper's Fork with field papers intact. Local newspapers recorded the case briefly. Woman researcher lost in storm, but no further investigation occurred. She was never located. The road she disappeared on led through the same area described in the Lewis diary. The WPA report filed under her initials MLR-15 was marked Closed Personnel Unrecovered. A later marginal note in a separate administrative document dated 1941 reads, MLR-15 terminated. Remaining materials absorbed into folklore section. It was signed by a supervisor identified only as JHK. His identity remains uncertain. The modern existence of the Lewis Diary is confirmed by two independent inventories, one from 1963 by the Tennessee State Archives and another from 1982 by the Civil War Manuscripts Project. Both identify it as authentic field material, 15th Regiment United States Colored Infantry. The binding and paper type are consistent with government-issued writing stock from the late war period. However, the content's tone deviates from standard military documentation. It lacks coordinates, tactical detail, or command structure. Instead, it consists largely of personal observations, weather notes, and the repetition of a phrase, "the ground is moving." Historians remain divided whether this is metaphor, psychological distress, or literal description. No other journals from the regiment contain similar phrasing. The diary's rediscovery prompted a brief academic exchange in 1978 between historian Leonard M. Page and anthropologist Francis Holloway. Page argued for its classification as subjective testimony under duress, noting parallels to other Union accounts of night terrors and trench hallucinations. Holloway disagreed, stating the text resembled proto-folkloric narrative construction within collective trauma. Both interpretations remain unresolved in subsequent literature. The earliest secondary reference to the phrase "the Fields Whisper" predates the WPA by decades. It appears once in an 1872 article from the Nashville Republican Banner describing post-war superstition among freedmen near Franklin. Locals refused to till certain grounds, claiming to hear the soft trampling of invisible feet at dusk. The article's tone is dismissive, but the location aligns with the same ridge noted in the diary. Archival inspection of Bureau correspondence for May-June 1865 confirms an uptick in local petitions regarding missing persons. Most petitions came from newly emancipated families seeking relatives conscripted or lost in Union service. Among them is one unsigned letter mentioning the hollow north of the river where the earth did not rest. It is uncertain whether this refers to the same area. A 1915 geological survey of the Franklin Basin records a section of ground with unstable subsoil and repeated collapses following heavy rain. The surveyors note remnants of wooden posts and metallic fragments of uncertain military origin. The site matches the coordinates described by later historians as the ridge. This evidence is circumstantial but consistent with the diary's environment. Cross-reference with Union muster rolls shows that 31 men from the 15th U.S. Colored Infantry were marked missing in action between April 12 and April 15, 1865. No after-action report clarifies their fate. The regiment's commanding officer, Colonel Thomas J. Downey, submitted a single-line dispatch detachment delayed by impassable terrain. The entry was never amended. Later Freedmen's Bureau field returns for Williamson County 1866 include references to rumors of patrols not returned and unsettled fields left unclaimed. The Bureau's Nashville office classified such references as civilian superstition and discontinued investigation. In the same archive box, a folded paper contains 4 words written in graphite Lowfield, North River. Its origin is unknown. By the early 20th century, folklore around the marching ridge had entered local black oral tradition. Field songs recorded by ethnographer Henry H. Curtis in 1919 include one verse, "Don't go north past sundown, child. Ground still walk, they say." The collector's note clarifies that singers identified the song as Old Soldier's Warning. Folklore source WPA Song Collection 1919. The recurrence of consistent geographic markers across historical, bureaucratic, and folkloric records gives the case an unusual credibility. Yet the academic community remains cautious. The absence of physical graves or documented engagement leads to classification under non-combat disappearance, a term generally used for desertion or disbandment. Still, the uniform number 30 men appears in 3 separate sources across 70 years. In 1987, historian Raymond Kelly revisited the site using early ground-penetrating radar. His report archived privately noted dense anomalies below 6 feet indeterminate composition. Kelly ceased his study, citing equipment malfunction and local resistance. He later confided in correspondence, "I heard rhythmic pressure beneath the soil repeating at intervals of 5 seconds. His papers end there. Kelly died in 1989 from heart failure while traveling the same Columbia-Franklin road once taken by rains. His assistant recorded that his last field notebook went missing after the incident. The archivist, who later attempted to reassemble his work, noted an uncanny repetition of prior disappearances, field worker, anthropologist, historian, all bound to the same terrain. Today, the diary of Corporal Lewis remains sealed under controlled conditions. Access requires written request to the Tennessee State Archives director. The ink continues to fade despite preservation. Under ultraviolet scan, a faint line on the final page becomes visible, 2 words unrecorded in earlier transcriptions. Still here. This line has become the focus of recent scholarly debate. Some propose it was a closing affirmation by the writer before capture or death. Others interpret it as interpolation from later handling. A chemical dating of the ink is inconclusive. The archivist's marginalia reads only possibly original. What remains certain is the consistent convergence of data points, 1 Ridge 30 men, recurrent vanishings of those who sought the truth. Between 1865 and 1989, at least 3 documented researchers disappeared or died shortly after working on this material. The pattern, though unverifiable, is noted in the 1991 Historical Survey Addendum under Cautionary Anomalies Unexplained Correlation. No official inquiry has been reopened. The site remains unmarked privately owned farmland. Visitors report nothing unusual. The records sit quietly in temperature-controlled drawers. Yet within the academic circle that still studies this case, one question persists: not whether the men vanished, but why the ground that once held them continues to appear in testimonies separated by generations. The field worker who recorded the original testimony vanished 2 years later on the same road. The first confirmed mention of the ridge appears in the Freedmen's Bureau Field Report, Franklin District, July 1865. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Harmon Wells, noted local freedmen refused to work ground adjacent to river lowlands, citing unease and persistent noise under soil. His handwriting is steady, bureaucratic, without speculation. Attached is a labor contract left unsigned. 12 freedmen withdrew the next day, offering no reason. The field was reassigned. In the same region, oral history preserved a chant collected decades later. "Don't set plow where the boys still sleep. River low hearts deep." The informant, a former sharecropper named Amos Turner, told WPA collectors in 1936 that his grandfather wouldn't cross that patch even with mule blindfolded. When asked why, Turner said, "Because the mule would know before the man did." A classified advertisement in the Nashville Union and American dated May 28, 1864 lists a missing laborer, Henry, 22. Black of medium height, last seen near Franklin wearing blue trousers and carrying a small drum. No further notice follows. The handwriting on the ad's reprint, now kept in the state archives, shows the name Carter and Lee Field Contractors. A penciled note beneath reads possible enlistment. Folklore recorded in 1903 mentions the drummer who walked home through the ground. An unnamed preacher in Williamson County told the collector they say he was called by his mother's dream. She heard the tapping through the floorboards, not on wood but under it. The detail of the drum returning through soil appears in at least 4 variants of the same story. Freedmen's Bureau Correspondence Number 74 issued August 1865 records complaints from residents near the Duck River. Reports of unsteady earth at night. Laborers reluctant to remain. Repeated request for guard presence. The report concludes tersely, no cause identified. Recommends cessation of plowing until inspection. The inspection never took place. The file ends with a penciled notation transferred to Nashville. In oral memory, that summer is remembered as the season the ground sighed. Interviewee Rachel Boyd, born 1859, recalled in 1937. "My daddy say at night the ground breathe like sleep. Every breath make the corn lean." Her testimony was filed in the WPA folder, Superstitions and Signs, Franklin County, Tennessee. An 1866 affidavit from the Freedmen's Bureau lists 6 families requesting relocation from the northern ridge near Williamson County boundary. The officer's remark reads, "Area appears safe but subject to strong wind at night. Reports of sound resembling troop movement. The application was approved. All 6 families resettled south by the following spring." In a different ledger, a hymn fragment appears titled, "March of the Gone." Recorded without melody notation, it reads, "Step in silence, Lord. Step in clay. Don't wake the ones you called away. The note beneath origin unknown, possibly field spiritual." Military record duplicates from the War Department compiled 1867 list 31 missing personnel of the 15th U.S. Colored Infantry, none recovered. The summary line reads, "No grave details provided." This entry stands out because most missing soldier reports include a notation of presumed capture or confirmed death. The absence of any cause indicates uncertainty, not neglect. In oral retelling, this uncertainty becomes transformation. The lost ones are not said to die, but to turn into sound. A mid-century sermon transcribed in 1942 from Reverend Ellis Gentry included the line, "The Lord takes them as music, not as men." The congregation answered with humming rather than words, a form sometimes described as the moan ring. A court file from Franklin County Case Number 116, 1873, preserves testimony by a farmer named Charles D. Wren, who claimed property damage due to unsteady soil and unexplained vibrations. When questioned, he stated, "There is a hum, not wind, not wagon, that shakes the fence posts." The court dismissed the case. The transcript includes a margin note from the clerk. Witness appeared sober. That same year, spiritual leader Sister Mercy Talbot led a prayer vigil on the Old Ridge. A participant named Jonas Lark later described in his own words, "We felt the ground throb under the hymn, like a heart wanting to answer." The statement was found in his notebook discovered after his death in 1892. Freedman's Bureau letter log, December 1865, includes an unsigned complaint written in a different hand. "The soldiers under the dark flag do not rest. Their steps still fall each night when fog come. Archivists have never located the origin of dark flag. No Confederate or Union unit bore that name." The letter is stored under Miscellaneous Correspondence, Franklin District file marked Unverified Civilian Reports. In the 1920s, folklorist Marion D. Hollow cataloged several Phantom Regiment stories across Tennessee. One entry describes colored troops seen marching without sound except in dream or vision. Hollow adds in her annotation common motif sightless drums. She treated the accounts as symbolic residue of post-war trauma, not literal haunting. A letter from Private Samuel Green dated April 10, 1865, recovered from the same region, describes the moon caught in water, the earth soft as breath. His unit was stationed 2 miles from the ridge. He signs the letter, "Yours till the river settles." It was never mailed. The folded envelope was found inside a powder box, unearthed in 1909. In the oral tradition, the phrase "till the river settles" became a euphemism for death. In church testimonies recorded in the early 1900s, elders would say of the departed, "He crossed before the river settled." A linguistic link between that idiom and Green's unsent letter remains debated among linguists, but is acknowledged as possible evidence of transmission through song. Freedman's Bureau Subdistrict Ledger, January 1866, lists livestock deaths in the same area. The report notes 2 mules and 1 horse expired without visible cause. Locals attribute to curse. The Bureau annotates no curse, recorded probable swamp gas or disease. The animals' bodies were buried, but later reported to resurface after heavy rain. The official investigation ceased. In contrast, a WPA narrative from 1935 recounts the same event differently. "The mules dug themselves out on the 3rd day. One stood upright and walked till morning." The collector annotated allegorical statement, "No evidence found." Military pension request, 1883, filed by Eliza Carter. Widow claims her husband Henry Carter served with the 15th Infantry, went missing April 1865, never heard again. The response from the Pension Bureau reads, "Name not found on surviving rosters." The letter is formal, dispassionate. Its enclosure, however, includes a hand-drawn map marked by Carter herself, a small hill by the river with 3 crosses sketched above. Her granddaughter, interviewed in 1938, said, "We still don't walk that hill. Granny say if you dig there, the air gets thick, like something breathing slow." Her statement ends with a pause marked by the interviewer as subject silent for 1 minute. A dispatch from Colonel Downey's orderly, April 14, 1865, refers to minor engagement north of Franklin and men withdrawn before sunrise. The document gives no casualty figures. The next entry, dated April 15th, reads only, "Unit dispersed, awaiting resupply." There are no subsequent references to that engagement in any surviving reports. Among black congregations in Franklin County, an Easter hymn persists whose refrain is, "We marched at night, we march still." The earliest transcription dates to 1871. The tune is minor, the tempo slow. No author is listed. Folklorists classify it as a derivative of "Go Down Moses," though no melodic similarity exists. An anonymous 1869 deposition to the Freedmen's Bureau describes lights over the ridge seen during rain. The observer notes, "They rise like lanterns but stay still." The investigating officer, Captain Milton Carr, concluded possible phosphorus from decaying material. No further notes appear. A tale told in Williamson County, still current in the 1930s, speaks of 30 lights that walk before thunder. Children were warned, "Count them and lose your voice." The WPA collector marked it folk superstition, child deterrent pattern. Another archival clue lies in the postal records of 1866. A letter addressed to Captain Harmon Wells Franklin Garrison was returned with a stamped notice addressee deceased. The record confirms Wells died of fever in August 1866. The sealed envelope is preserved unopened. X-ray imaging in 2002 revealed faint writing, only 2 legible words still walking. A corresponding oral fragment from 1898 recounts a Union man whose letters answered themselves. According to storyteller John Mosley, he sent a letter and it came back whispering his name inside. Scholars classify it as a mirror echo legend, a narrative motif where communication continues beyond death. A local court notice from 1870 records a petition to rename the disputed farmland as Rest Field. The name was denied due to conflict with an existing property title. The land remained unnamed northern parcel in state documents until 1902. Current county maps still omit any label for that elevation. In oral genealogy circles, descendants of former residents call it the field that won't keep a name. The phrase survives in family records and sermons. Every time you name it, one elder told the interviewer it starts whispering the old one back. Fact and folklore continue to reflect each other like the faces of a coin worn smooth. Each record leaves a trace. Each story fills its absence. Bureau papers describe vibration, locals describe breath. Military forms note silence, hymns describe rhythm. In the margin between them lies the same image repeated across generations, a ground that remembers movement, a sound that refuses to die. And between these two archives, one of ink, one of voice, a single line persists, crossing from document to dream. The ground still walks. The War Department Inquiry File number 22197-1866 states, "No survivors were found at the designated location north of Franklin. The area exhibited signs of prior habitation and minor skirmish. No enemy remains identified. The conclusion is categorical, bureaucratic, final." Oral record collected 60 years later contradicts it entirely. Informant Moses Clay, age 92, Franklin County, WPA, 1935. "My daddy say them drums still answered that night. Sounded like a man breathing through wood. Every beat softer till dawn come." Freedmen's Bureau Circular 14, filed July 1866, summarizes the matter of missing patrol resolved. Unit presumed drowned attempting river crossing. No evidence of crossing or debris was ever located. In an old sermon transcribed by the Reverend Alston, 1899, they say water rose but never took them. The river only held its breath. Congregants replied amen, and then silence followed, recorded on phonograph crackle, the first recorded pause labeled as unintentional. Field sketch by Army engineer J.E. Dowell shows coordinates matching the ridge, annotated terrain unfit for habitation. The rest of the map is torn, edges browned. On the reverse, a faded word returned. Archivists note the next line is missing. Only one word remains. In a 1921 folktale transcription by Elsie Hunt, a woman recalls, "They came back all 30, but you could see the light through them. You couldn't speak or they'd fade." The collector added, informant insistent this was no vision but sound dream repeated across generations. A telegram from Colonel Downey. April 20th, 1865, loss estimated, remaining men to be reassigned. The line following estimated is illegible, water damaged. The telegram ends abruptly, paper split at fold. The final memorandum in the Franklin Ridge file bears the date February 3rd, 1991. It reads, "No additional recovery possible. Remaining artifacts to be sealed indefinitely. Access suspended." Beneath that typed line, a faint pencil note appears. Silence required. There are no signatures. The file is stamped closed, but the paper itself has no period at the end. After that, the record ends. Requests for access in 1994, 1998, and 2003 all received identical replies, record unavailable. The absence is uniform, systematic, a bureaucratic rhythm repeating itself every decade. What once was field data becomes silence recorded as policy. The absence now has structure. In a private letter from 1993, historian Francis Holloway wrote, "I begin to think the missing are not a subject, but a pattern. Each time I return to those fields, the air grows thick like it is holding a word it cannot speak." The next line is blacked out by pen. The ink seeped through, leaving only the indentation of her handwriting. One oral account recorded in 2001 recalls, "They never gone, just folded in." The woman who said it was 94 years old. When asked what she meant, she pressed her hand to her chest and whispered, "You hear them when your heart slows down enough." The interviewer's transcript ends mid-sentence. The tape clicks silent, still recording. 31 names missing from military file. 30 sung an oral record. The count never reconciled. The gap of one remains unexplained, a numerical ghost repeating through every document. That single missing name appears again in a 1938 sermon fragment. He was the one who stayed to listen. The phonograph captures a minute of breath before the reel stops. Excavation notes from 1974 describe unidentified resonance, 4 beats, pause, repeat. The sound engineer noted no instrument present. His last annotation, rhythm, irregular human tempo. The page following that entry is blank except for a faint imprint of his pen pressing through the paper as if he kept writing after he stopped. Locals call that rhythm the field's heart. They say thunder never lands directly above the ridge. It circles it following the old drumline's pattern. Farmers who plow near it report vibrations that stop as soon as they lift the blade. Scientists say it's nothing more than density shift in subsoil. The community calls it memory. An archival technician in 2006 replayed the 1937 wax cylinder. Beneath static, she heard a pulse 72 beats per minute, the same frequency as an adult heartbeat. She wrote in her report, unclear if artifact or body. The file ends with the word answered. The recording itself cuts off 1 second later. Fact, the ridge remains empty. The soil yields nothing. Folklore, the ridge still hums. Children press their ears to the ground and say they hear the soldiers breathing. Adults dismiss it as imagination, yet they do not stay after dusk. The contradiction has lasted a century and a half, truth split in 2 halves of the same silence. A dream testimony from 1940 resurfaced in digital scans released in 2015. The speaker said, "I walked beside the river. Water black as iron, someone beating a drum under it. Bubbles said my name." The official note says nightmare, no significance. But the recorder's margin reads, sound continued 5 seconds after subject woke. In the Lewis diary, the ink bled until words vanished. In 1937, Margaret Raines vanished on the same road. In 1974, the engineer abandoned his dig. In 1989, historian Kelly wrote, "The sound returned. Each silence layers upon the last a stack of absences forming its own structure. The pattern is older than any one life." When researchers play the old cylinder, they describe hearing pressure, not melody. A pulse that continues after playback stops. One archivist wrote, "Headphones removed, yet rhythm persists." The next sentence was censored in the public copy. Only an empty bracket remains where his observation should be. The diary remains under glass at 18 degrees C. Ink stability checks occur quarterly. Each inspection records the same note, slight expansion of lettering consistent with breathing pattern. The final visible word glows darker than the rest under ultraviolet light still. No one can confirm whether it darkened naturally or by addition. Within the community, the phrase "still here" became call and response. Preacher who remains congregation, still here. Origin unknown, predating records of local churches. No one remembers who spoke it first. The phrase now serves as both declaration and warning presence disguised as echo. In 2010, an anthropologist compared the recording of that chant with the 1974 excavation rhythm. The waveforms matched exactly. 2 generations apart, 2 mediums, same pulse. When she saved the comparison file, her system returned an error-corrupted data. The folder remains blank to this day. A newspaper from 1871 carries a short line, "Locals report drums beneath soil, clergy advise prayer." The following issue bears the same date and serial number. Identical print 1 day apart. No explanation in the press archives. Historians call it a duplication error. The community calls it the field's reply. It is no longer possible to tell which version began the soldier's diary or the freedman's song. Both describe a ground that moves. Both name the same ridge. Scholars argue over syntax. The rhythm remains unchanged. The echo is identical in every century. Words differ, but cadence endures. The river has narrowed with time, its banks overgrown. Fishermen report a vibration through the hull at dusk. Geological surveys note no current disturbance. Yet each spring on April nights, water ripples without wind. Locals say the river keeps count for the men who never returned. The final WPA reel, Raines is recording before she disappeared, ends with her own voice reading, "The sound you hear is not the past returning, but the ground remembering your step." Then silence. The annotation says operator uncertain whether machine stopped or listener froze. No further line. No one wrote again. No one spoke of the missing 31. No one closed the file. The river stands. The ink spreads. The drum answers. And when the recordings play even in empty rooms, something keeps time beneath the silence. The diary of Corporal James H. Lewis rests today in the Tennessee State Archives Climate Room 3 shelf C12. It is wrapped in acid-free cotton sealed beneath a double layer of glass. The ink continues to expand microscopically, forming new shadows where words used to be. The curators monitor humidity and temperature but avoid opening the pages. Their reports note the same line every quarter: condition stable. Text obscured further. The surviving field reports, letters, and correspondence cited in previous studies are now digitized in the Civil War manuscripts database. Public access remains partial, 31 pages redacted due to privacy or deterioration. The bureau entries once housed in Washington were microfilmed, but 5 reels are missing from the catalog. Whether they were misplaced or deliberately withdrawn has not been determined. The wax cylinder recordings collected by the WPA are stored at the Library of Congress Folklife Archive Audio Box 7. Each cylinder carries a label in faint graphite Franklin 1937 MLR. The initials are assumed to belong to Margaret L. Raines. Technicians have attempted to digitize them, but several reels emit a continuous low hum that interferes with playback. The frequency matches the rhythm documented in the 1974 excavation report 4 beats, pause, repeat. The small ridge, once called unnamed northern parcel, is privately owned farmland. The current owners declined formal excavation. Soil testing performed in 2018 confirmed unusual magnetic interference, but no trace of human remains. Grass still grows faster on the central strip, and shallow indentations appear after rainfall, though satellite imaging shows no consistent pattern. The official survey describes it as non-anomalous terrain variation. Scholars remain divided. Some interpret the phenomenon as psychological residue, collective grief embedded in landscape. Others treat it as a study in narrative transmission, how an event with no conclusion transforms into self-perpetuating folklore. Each side cites the same evidence. Each denies the other's premise. Between them lies the same question: what does history record when it cannot find the body? In 2015, a graduate student from Vanderbilt University discovered a misfiled folder in the archive's cold storage vault. Inside were 3 contact sheets labeled Lewis Diary Infrared Test. The photographs show faint marks invisible to the eye, curved indentations shaped like sound waves. The technician who scanned them described the effect as a pulse rendered in ink. No explanation followed. The last verified piece of new data appeared in a 2020 preservation audit. During humidity calibration, one archivist reported hearing a steady pulse through the case frame. No sound was detected by recording devices. The archivist's statement concludes with a single line: sound confirmed only when alone. The report is unsigned. Local residents rarely mention the story now. New generations drive over the ridge without knowing what lies beneath. Only the oldest remember fragments: a hymn, a verse, a rule not to whistle near the field. Each retelling shortens losing words until only rhythm remains. What endures is cadence, the same 4-beat pattern recorded, sung, or simply felt in the throat when silence lengthens. In church gatherings, the call and response still occurs. "Who remains?" asks the elder. "Still here," the congregation replies. No one claims to know when the phrase began, yet everyone recognizes its weight. It serves both as prayer and as proof that to name the absence is to acknowledge presence. The echo is the record. Historians who study the case now speak of it less as a mystery and more as a reflection of method, a story built from what history cannot hold. The ridge becomes a metaphor for archival process itself, solid yet shifting underfoot. Every investigation leaves another indentation in the ground. Each silence deepens the field. From an analytical standpoint, the Lost Battalion is no longer a military event, but a linguistic one. The disappearance survives because language refused to end. Ground whispers became fields still whisper. The sentence kept adapting as though history itself sought new syntax to describe forgetting. The echo became structure. Repetition became existence. One researcher once described the case as a self-recording absence. The phrase was never published. It appears in an internal memo retrieved from an email backup dated 2008. Attached was an audio file labeled ridge.wave. When opened, the file contained no audible sound, only a flat line with periodic tremors. The timecode ran for 31 seconds. Every story that followed, newspaper article, sermon, WPA transcript, field note, mirrors the same design. Each claims to conclude but ends mid-line. It is as if closure itself was incompatible with the subject. The ridge resists punctuation. The voices continue their march inside the gaps between words. On the surface, the evidence remains inconclusive. No remains, no proven haunting, no verified acoustic anomaly. Only coincidence layered over repetition. And yet the documents show a different consistency, each generation rediscovering the same rhythm by accident. Not a haunting, but an inheritance. The drums in the earliest diary, the river in the dreams, the pulse beneath the soil, the breath on the old recordings all converge. They are not separate symbols, but a continuum of the same echo. Each reappears when silence grows long enough to listen. The pattern does not vanish. It waits. An archivist once described opening the storage room late at night and hearing the air move as if pages turned by themselves. No sound, she wrote, only the impression that sound had just stopped. The sentence sits at the bottom of her log, followed by an empty line and the typed word, end. The page number repeats twice. A philosophy professor reviewing these materials summarized it plainly. Perhaps the act of vanishing is a form of record-keeping. To disappear completely is to fix oneself beyond correction. What survives of the 15th Infantry may not be physical but procedural, the rhythm of being rewritten, erased, and remembered again. The official narrative concludes with uncertainty. The folkloric version continues endlessly. One fades, one repeats. Between them is a third possibility that both are the same story told through two frequencies of silence. The drums never ceased. We simply stopped listening at the right depth. At the end of the last preservation log, dated 2024, a staff member added a single observation in the comment field: vibration felt while sealing display case. There is no verification. Only that one line typed cleanly unbolded, unremarkable, yet it extends the chain of continuity. The ridge still answers through paper. Maybe they didn't disappear. Maybe we did. Because every generation builds its own silence, calls it history, calls it order, calls it done while the echo keeps walking beneath. The truth never vanishes. It only changes listeners. In the end, what remains of the battalion is not the march nor the field, but the enduring pulse between fact and faith, the rhythm of the living, forgetting what still remembers them. Oral testimony contradicts the void. Informant old Sarah Carter. They never reassigned. They marched home invisible. You could hear boots on no feet. A civilian affidavit dated 1871 describes light mist on the hill resembling movement of troops. The investigating officer dismissed the report as optical illusion refraction due to humidity. The note is typed. The carbon copy bears a faint double exposure of the same sentence. From the same community, a school teacher told her students, "If you see the ridge breathe, look away." The oral version ends mid-line because those who watch too long, the page is torn there. War pension docket 1880. Petition denied. Service record cannot be verified. The rejection stamp bleeds through, obscuring the widow's name. Beneath it, written in pencil, "He still called my name." The handwriting is hers, faint, cramped, unsent. Folklore preserves the same phrase as refrain in an 1894 hymn. "He still call my name, though the roll be burned." The melody is minor, the meter uneven. Ethnomusicologists note pauses matching a heartbeat pattern. A 1906 academic paper by E.L. Caffrey concludes, "No verifiable evidence supports claims of anomalous sound phenomena." He references superstitions among rural freedmen communities. His last paragraph ends mid-sentence. "Further study may." The page breaks. No continuation exists. WPA collector Ella Grant wrote in 1938, "People told me don't read that man's work out loud. They say his words keep moving after he stop." The remark was flagged as subjective superstition, though the annotation remains. An 1867 military property inventory lists missing equipment: 1 drum, 2 rifles, 6 belts. At the bottom, an unclassified note: "Heard the drum again, different direction." The signature line is left blank. In an oral retelling from the same region, the drum was empty, no skin, no stick, just sound. The story appears in 4 WPA counties, identical wording each time recorded by different workers unaware of one another's notes. Bureau log, December 1865. No graves located. Ground compacted but dry. No disturbance after inspection. Attached soil sample lost during transfer box marked missing 1874 flood. Community record. The ground shook that week. We covered our windows. Something walked and then stopped. Written in 1891 by church elder Benaiah Flood, surname coincidental, dated 3 generations after the storm. Report from Surgeon A.J. Morton, May 1865. Symptoms among remaining personnel: restlessness, loss of hearing, insomnia, possible stress-induced echo phenomena. His handwriting tightens across the page. The last two lines are crossed out completely. In later oral belief, echo sickness became a phrase for people who dreamed of marching men. Healers were said to cure it by burying the listener's shoes in the yard overnight. The practice appears repeatedly in spiritual folklore between 1870 and 1900. An 1869 quartermaster account registers loss of supplies, tents, water barrels, percussion instruments. A follow-up inspection 2 years later finds soil subsidence, uneven depressions, minor artifacts not detailed. Folklore remembers differently. They say the land kept the shape of the drums. Testimony by Willis Dunn. WPA, 1937, if you walk there the earth curves like a drum skin and your steps go hollow. A private letter from Lieutenant Harmon Wells to his wife, June, 1865. We have searched 3 nights. The ground answers in rhythm. I am not afraid, but I cannot explain. The last word in the original letter appears smeared unreadable. An unconnected oral account in 1897 repeats, he was the man who heard what wasn't there. Locals call the echo Wells's March. The phrase remains among descendants, though the name's origin is long forgotten. Bureau Communication, August 1866. Rumors persist of disobedience among colored troops refusing relocation orders. No disciplinary actions recorded. The annotation, no regiment currently stationed in that area. Folk version inverts it entirely. They never refused. They just kept marching. A song fragment preserved on wax cylinder ends. They left no camp, no sound, only step after step after step. The record crackles into silence described by archivists as mechanical decay resembling faint cadence. A 1910 correspondence between 2 archivists references the ridge file anomaly. One writes, document cannot be found, though index confirms existence. The reply, perhaps we removed it twice. The exchange is included in MISC Administrative Box 44. WPA folklore worker Lillian Poole noted in her 1935 journal, they talk about the government losing papers on purpose, so the ghosts won't be counted. Her supervisor circled the line marked delete before submission. The deletion was not carried out. Army Record of Missing Persons, 1870. Case closed. No further evidence. Unit dissolved. The entry occupies 1 clean line printed neatly without footnote. Oral memory opposes closure. Interviewee, Reverend John Fears, 1936. They ain't dissolved, just quiet. Quiet don't mean gone. The tape ends with a low hum picked up by the recording machine. Archivists label it unintentional resonance. An archaeological dig report from 1974, subsurface disturbance consistent with collapsed pit. Composition, iron oxide ash, small fragments of bone. Analysis incomplete due to instrument malfunction. The document includes the note operator requested termination of study. A letter from that same operator, J. Ellis, written 1 week before his death. They told me not to listen when the wind shifts, but I did. It's not wind. The rest of the letter is missing. Only his signature remains. University Archive Memorandum, 1982, audio artifact recovered from 1937, WPA cylinder, 9 seconds. Faint, percussive rhythm frequency 72 BPM. Source undetermined. The tape ends with a pop and static burst. The next line reads simply, returned. Local legend interprets that noise differently. They finally answered, said Elder Matthew Lee, interviewed in 1985. You don't record the dead and expect silence. They always find their rhythm again. Census update. Williamson County, 1871, population adjusted after correction of prior enumeration errors. 30 names removed due to duplication. No list of names survives. The administrative register between pages 302 to 303 is torn. Community oral list from the same year preserves 30 names handwritten by Church Deacon Henry Strong, all different from official records. When asked about the source, Strong replied, I copied them from the air that night. Later, Academic Review, 1990. The phenomenon of overlapping records, identical gaps in independent archives remains unexplained. Researchers call it the Franklin silence. It appears wherever the lost battalion is mentioned, as if pages agree to omit themselves. A farmer interviewed the same year spoke with indifference, I don't need papers. The ground still moves under tractor wheels. His voice fades on the tape before he finishes the sentence. The interviewer writes in margin end of recording, no conclusion given. 2 lines always parallel, one typed, one spoken. Report. No survivors were found. Oral record. But the drums still answered that night. The next line is missing. Only one word remains: returned.